got the story. Charles Szymanski.
That guy.
Yeah.
Where is he? Yeah, come on down, Charles.
Okay, so I think y'all all know I'm not what you would call an English major.
Hey.
I
Say that with reverence, sir.
I decided to write a story anyway, so I'd like to read it to all y'all. It is entitled Belle of the Ball. It is a dark and stormy night in East Tennessee, with crickets chirping in chorus as the rumble of a distant approaching thunderstorm echoes in the muggy heat over the cornfields. At the end of a rutted dirt road with a yield sign that appears to have been shot at many times over the years with every firearm known to man, sits a rickety, dilapidated old house that possesses 2 great windows on the first floor and 4 smaller windows which have been yellowing, lacy curtains pulled tightly closed over the apertures on the second floor. A weather-beaten porch, painted in layers of peeling yellow paint, the color of dead and faded sunflowers, wraps around the front and the sides of the house like the embrace of an old friend who has fallen on hard times. The yard sprawls in disarray from the front of the porch and is covered in faint lines and spots that are probably the work of children long gone, who had great fun in digging up the rich Tennessee of the clay of their yard, no doubt prompting many a stern scolding from their parents. The yard is enclosed in a picket fence with gaps in it from the loss, over the years, of the boars that constituted some of the pride of the family and displaying a well-kept face to the world. At the end of the worn, gray gravel over Clay Drive, a faded black mailbox on a twisted ancient hedge fence post proclaims to the world that this is the only residence in the bleak world of the Green family. On the porch, an ancient, splintery white porch swing moves slowly back and forth in front of one of the grand windows, and the almost non-existent breeze forewarning of the terror and fury of the storm yet to come. This whisper of wind is the only relief from the incessant heat and humidity of the late summer Tennessee night. Next to the gently moving swing, an inexpertly painted plywood end table is covered with the dead and dried remains of a wildflower bouquet that had probably been picked along the side of the road. Along a jaunt by a well-meaning someone for the inhabitant of the house. Beneath the swing, a battered red tin dog bowl reads Blackbeard, a remnant and reminder of a beloved Green family pet who had one day been chasing a red squirrel holding an acorn from the looming and dark oak tree across the road, which had been planted by the first Green to settle on the ground, had been ran over by the mail truck after leaving it with the Sunday paper. On the left of the porch swing is a screen door which has been mended many times to try and keep the mosquitoes out, leading to the interior of the gloomy house. Upon entering the house, the first impression of a visitor would be the old-fashionedness of the furnishings and the musty taste of the air, which tastes of it had not been stirred in eons. The ancient, faded linoleum floors patterned with an abstract art made of a year's worth of dirty shoe prints, and the ancient gum rubber boots mixed with raincoats and gloves make an untidy tangle at the end of the entryway. On the right, immediately after entry, is a coat tree made by driving 10-penny nails from a torn-down shed into an upright pine beam ripped to size from that same shed which had been in the back of the house until a strong wind had blown it over on a blustery spring day. This, which in principle should have held all the coats of the family on it, only held a child-sized red coat, while all the other overgarments were on the floor around the pole, dropped carelessly, with all the pride of a beaten dog, on the linoleum to accumulate dust and dirt. To the left, after entering the door, was another portal, this dismal one having a bead curtain obscuring all side of the room beyond from any visitor who might wish to enter. A visitor pushing through the bead curtain to enter the room beyond would expose an extremely old-fashioned sitting room. The worn plaster of the walls is beginning to crack in the humid heat, exposing the knotty white pine lath supports. The couches on the side of the room facing the grand window are dusty red velveteen, with clawed feet and grooved armrests on the sides. The off-white rug on the floor is worked in a braided pattern on the edges and a checked pattern of raised squares in the center. Slightly off the exact center of the rug, somewhat closer to the couches than the window, rests an antique white oak coffee table, which over the years and countless applications of wax has turned into a glossy and slick surface very pleasing to the touch. Resting on intricate doilies on the ancient table are black and white formal photos of men in army uniforms with an American flag in the background and caps on their arms. Also on the table were knickknacks, which appeared to have been sent back from England and France, a cheap tin box with a Union Jack on the lid, and a champagne bottle filled to the brim with beach sand. The grand window on the wall, which lacks a screen, is open just a crack to let in the gentle breeze swaying the porch swing. In the corner, an ancient television enclosed in some dark wood with small replicas of the statue of Abraham Lincoln from the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., sit mute, flanking the television, bearing silent witness to the momentous news that has been reported from the outside world in times past. The television now stands solemnant and dark, with nothing disturbing the silence of the room, except the crickets chirping their doleful song and a click, click from knitting needles in the corner. In the corner, sitting in a throne that might have been hewed from the heart of a monarchical oak in the darkest forest of the Appalachians, sits a wizened old lady, dressed in a light green dress with ivory shoes, the clicking of her needles steady as a metronome and soothing as a clock ticking away. Beside the old lady on a turned mahogany table, covered in yet another intricate doily, sits a basket overflowing with different types of yarn, all in neat balls and all with their ends taped down with duct tape, except for the forestry ball currently in use. The aged and lined old face looks straight ahead, no longer needing to see her work to do it with more perfection and with tighter weave than the machine can. From the porch, a faint noise that sounds like a faint scratching, a noise that most would completely dismiss, brings the ancient neck to swivel around with the precision of a snake. The noise stops, and the dame's head goes back to staring straight ahead at a crack in the wall that could possibly resemble a tributary of the Mississippi River, and thinking of better times past. Again, the almost imperceptible scratching on the porch brings the bell of the ball back to the present, where on the peeling, rickety porch railing, she sees a pair of green eyes appear like the balefires that haunt the marshes at night. The spindly wrists of the lady stop knitting for the first time and reach over to the wicker sewing basket in a calm and measured gesture, dipping down into the soft yarn. The questing fingers are impeded on their search because they are bearing a diamond engagement ring cut in archaic pattern and woven across with thin strands of gold, which get caught on the skeins of wool, but the sure digits eventually succeed in their quest. The long, delicate fingers touch and pull out the gleaming 3 3/4 pound blue steel construction of a Smith & Wesson Model 460 single-action revolver. The gimlet-eyed grandmother of 4 lays the sight squarely in the center of the 2 glowing eyes and gently takes up the slack on the trigger. With an explosion of fire and wrath, the hammer falls, sending the 360-grain bullet down the fluted bull barrel at 1,900 feet per second. The concussion of the bullets passing shakes the room, causing the photographs on the table to topple and the Lincoln statuettes spanking the television to vibrate in a chorus of sympathy. The muzzle blast shoots a 4-foot-long tongue of flame towards the window, singeing the lacy doilies in the curtains, which are going back to invite in the night breeze. When the bullet strikes the head, possessing the ghostly green eyes, it develops 2,900 foot-pounds of energy, spraying blood, pulverized bone, and brains all over the yard in its passage until it impacts in the rich soil across the road. Inside the living room, which now smells overwhelmingly of the acrid stench of gunpowder, the monolithic chair has been pushed back several inches, scratching the floor in the process. The spidery old lady sits there, holding her smoking gun, and says to herself, "Well, that's one coon that ain't ever gonna eat my sweet corn anymore, by God!"
You know, Charles said that story was based in Tennessee, but he's the only 10 I see.